do like this. Can you just whip down? Okay. Let's talk about the whip pan. It's simple, effective, but how do you sell the effect? Here's some quick tips to enhance this transition. First, let's tackle the most important piece, the movement. See what Peace did there? See how there was no like jerking motion? It was just a nice, smooth whip, either left or right. And you can keep rolling the whole time. There's a few things that you'd like to keep in mind as you're doing this movement, and you can do this with pretty much any camera, any focal length. The wider the focal length, the more enhanced this transition might seem, but you can do this with any lens. One thing I like to do is I like to keep my elbows tucked in, I like to keep my wrists locked, and as I move, rather than try to move with my wrists like this, I like to lock everything and move as one unit. I just feel that it comes out a little bit smoother, a little bit more predictable, and if you have IBIS or if you have stabilization turned on, sometimes when you jitter before you do your whip, so to give you an example, if your wrists aren't locked and you're doing a bit of motion prior to the whip, sometimes it comes out a little bit too warped and it's not super fluid. So just making sure that you just start from your frame and you move in one simple direction. Another keynote is you don't always have to forcefully jerk your camera. All you have to do is just make sure that once you start your motion, it's kind of uniform and it's continuous and it doesn't speed up or slow down. You can always go ahead and speed this up using a simple speed ramp or simple timeline adjustment. The other thing is that once you have your motion clip, you can actually cut your motion at any point that makes the cuts between the two motions continuous. Kind of playing along with the focal length choice, the distance that you put between your subject and the actual transitions kind of plays a part as well. You can go ahead and play with various distances, various focal lengths to give your transitions more depth and more impact when you actually introduce your next scene. There's no real rules to this, but typically I like to do my whip pans handheld. You can go ahead and use a tripod, one of those like fluid head ones, or even if you just loosen a ball head tripod, you can just go ahead and twist your camera. Usually that kind of constricts you to just the horizontal plane. So you can go left, right, if you're doing it vertically, obviously up, down. But typically I would say like 95% of my whip transitions are handheld. With any great transition, it's clearly important to have a great visual component, but the audio plays just as big of a role in the selling of the total effect as a whole. One of the questions I get asked a lot in my sound design for filmmaking and just short form content in general is my sound design, especially when you're thinking about transitions, and in this case, the whip pan transition. A great place to get different sound effects and layer sound effects is Artlist, today's sponsor. Artlist has a huge library of different sound effects that you can go ahead and layer to really help sell your transitions. So in this case, for whip pans in particular, what I like to go ahead and do is find a few different types of whooshes, different lengths, different variations of tones and how deep they sound, and go ahead and layer them together to create a really cohesive transition sound. A couple sounds that I like to layer together are the deep whoosh sound and also the short, fast whoosh that you can find on Artlist. Those different sounds paired with risers. Risers are often used to help build suspense. If you pair a riser before you go ahead and put in the whoosh, and then pairing that with an impact right if the next scene whips down or whips in or whatever movement you have planned, those are the sort of things that really sell your effect.
If you're interested in Artlist and you're looking for a little extra bonus, use the link in the description for 2 free months off your next annual plan. It's a pretty good deal.
Thank you, Artlist, for sponsoring this video. One of the difficulties when you do the whip pan transition is remembering which direction you're gonna go ahead and enter or exit your scenes. And one thing I like to do is I like to go ahead and give myself some variations, some options when I'm filming. And that just means sometimes I do all 4 directions for each scene that I know is gonna be a pivotal moment in the film or the short form reel that you're gonna make. And what I'll go ahead and do is I'll just exit, or I'll take 4 different takes, one full clip, and I'll just go, one time I'll go left, one time I'll go right, one time I'll go up, down, just to give myself that option later of going ahead and cutting the way that I'd like to. And then alternatively, when I enter, I'll also do 4 different entry points, and sometimes it might seem overkill. I don't do it for every scene. Don't get me wrong, that's kind of an annoying thing to do. But if it's a scene, if it's like a pivotal, right, I would say it's the right piece. Like if it's a key moment in your video and you really want to get that whip transition correct, I would just go ahead and shoot it 4 different times. It doesn't take too long and it'll save you a lot of hassle in the edit. So this clip, if I was super interested in keeping this in my final edit, what I would go ahead and do is I would start here, I'd go right, I go left, I go down, up, And then if I wanted to, I could go ahead and do different variations of the entry point. So I could whip in, I could whip from the right, from the left, and then do one where I'm coming up. Another trick that you could do sometimes if the movement isn't a thing that looks weird when you reverse it, like if it's people walking, it'll look weird if you reverse it, but sometimes I just reverse clips, and that gives you also the other option of if you enter the wrong way, or you could flip clip sometimes. There's a little stuff that you can do in the edit that sometimes works, but more often than not, you want to get it right in the actual movement. Now the whip transition is cool, but the key is to not overuse it. Don't be using the whip transition on every scene. But I think it does have a place in filmmaking, and especially short form content. I actually see a lot of people giving a lot of hate to transitions in general, and I feel like you have to keep in mind that short form content is different than traditional cinematography and traditional filmmaking. But I think short form content really is a great place to play around with transitions. And even in cinematography, your favorite music videos, your favorite movies all use various transitions, and just knowing when and where to use them is a big plus, and it gives you a lot of fuel to your fire and your whole brigade of what you want to make visually and environmentally, and it just helps build everything together. Case in point, it's better to know how to do transitions. It's better to have different transitions in your arsenal than not to know how to do them and then go ahead and use them whenever you'd like. So my point being, transitions are cool. This transition I use a lot. You can use it in short form, you can use it in your long form. There's different ways, different applications you can do it. Make sure to lock your wrists when you're moving, when you're doing this handheld. You can do this on a tripod. You can do this anywhere, anytime, any place, and that's why I love it so much. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Thanks, peace, and I'll see you guys in the next one.